Thank you all for joining us for Sketching with Sychronous and Ordered, a part of our Solid Edge training series. My name is Elise Woods, and I am one of the marketing specialists here at Swoosh Technologies, and I will be your host for today. Just a little on Swoosh. Oops, excuse me. We've been a leading provider and partner of Siemens PLM for over 11 years. Our team is dedicated to providing you with the best software solutions, technical support, and process-based training to help you design and manufacture better. Our commitment to changing the way designers and manufacturers learn and leverage PLM tools has been a major focus for us and will continue to be our goal moving forward. Presenting today is application engineer Dylan Malik. For over 2 decades, Dylan has seen the growth and changes of CAD design and understands how the latest technology has really benefited many companies' processes with hands-on experience in sheet metal fabrication, structural design, surfacing, rendering, animation, and 2D drafting to 3D modeling. He is a certified Solid Edge professional and a sought-after Swoosh training instructor with great working knowledge of best practices that can help your team deliver better projects painlessly. With Solid Edge, there are so many different ways to utilize features within the program tool. There may be better ways to approach how you design. In this training series, Dylan will show us tools and tips that will give you even more speed and flexibility while further expanding your knowledge in Solid Edge. Today, we'll be talking sketching with Sychronous and Ordered. 2D part drawings can be used to recreate existing designs in 3D that inherit 2D manufacturer dimensions automatically, while assembling drawings can be used to drive the fit and position of a complete product. Sychronous technology enables 3D modeling from our systems to be edited as though they are not native Solid Edge. During this presentation, if you do have any questions, feel free to add these in the question box located in your GoToWebinar panel. Dylan will answer your questions after the presentation, and we will try to get to as many as we can. So now I'm going to pass it on to Dylan and have him take it away. Oh, come on. One moment, sorry. Here we go.
Okay, thank you. All right, so make sure my screen is being shown. Yep, should be good here. All right, thank you folks for joining in today. So yeah, we're going to be talking about synchronous and ordered sketches. Just to kind of give you the rundown, I'm going to be going through some of the tutorials, and what we're going to provide with you, or for you I should say, is the PDF that I'm using, and I'll show you how to access this. This is for ST9, so for people that are using earlier versions or on the trial version, you can just download them from here and use them. I'll show you the people how to get to them elsewhere through Solid Edge. And so there's a lot of the tutorials we're going to be covering are actually through here. So we're going to provide this to you as well as the actual training files. A couple of the files in here are not in the part of the training. They're just kind of add-ons I'm going to be showing you how to do. And we're going to give you the video, obviously, so you can follow along if you want to try it out in the future. Just to follow along with the tutorials. It'll be pretty simple. All right, so we're going to get into Solid Edge, and I'll just show you how to access the location of where I got the training files from. Go to out of the way. All right, so once you're inside of Solid Edge, inside of a template, you can easily look on the right side. You'll see YouTube, Facebook. There's a Learn at Solid Edge. Sometimes it may be up here by this little check mark, or the question mark, I should say. So Learn at Solid Edge. Choose a learning path, and I got the files from the Siemens website. It does not require a login. It's just an open link. You just click it, go to self-paced and classroom courses. So what I do is teach a lot of fundamentals classes, and this is kind of what we're going to be starting with, fundamentals on sketching, how synchronous sketches work, how ordered sketches work, and how they can work together, and also talking about 2D sketches into 3D. All right, so the tutorials that we're using is the fundamentals course right here, sketching. So these are just broken out into nothing but sketches. If you're doing it online, you can watch the sketch course right here, and it gives you a nice little video to play along with it. And the PDF that I just showed you is available right through this link in the PowerPoint, and of course the training files. So if you're using 9, that's great. You can just use the files I uploaded. But if you're using an earlier version of Solid Edge, go to that link in your Solid Edge, and it'll take you to the appropriate versions of the training files for your particular version. All right, so let's get into Solid Edge. So we're in the template that I kind of need to start with. We're in the part template. Sketching in part, sketching in sheet metal, same type of styles, things you do the same. So there's really nothing different between the two environments on how you create sketches. So let me explain for those new to Solid Edge, coming from maybe SolidWorks and Inventor. We have two environments we work in. We have a Sychronous, which is more of a direct editing style. You notice right here in my Pathfinder, it says Sychronous. By default, that's the starting template. But if you're coming from SolidWorks and maybe want to stay in the ordered style, you can just right-click there where it says Sychronous and say Transitional Ordered. What this is going to do is change your menu bars, and you notice it changed up here to more of a traditional feature-based styles as opposed to the freeform. And to access that, so it's always the same setting. If you go to Tools, so I'll go up to the Application button, Tools, Settings, Options. If you look under the Helper tab, you'll have a toggle right here. So start, part, and sheet metal using what type of environment, synchronous or ordered. So you can predefine how you want your templates to start. If you want to start ordered, obviously check ordered off. But if you, I kind of like the synchronous environment. I'd probably use that majority of the time now. All right, so let me explain how this works with the sketching. Notice we're on the home tab currently, so I'm just on the splash or the base screen here, so which is my home tab. Underneath it, we have sketching. These are the exact same tools you notice that are on the home tab, so you'll have the exact same kind of features here. I'm just going to go to the sketching tab because a lot of the things here were organized just for what I need to show today. All right, so we have our sketch type geometry, lines, arcs. Obviously, with the drop downs, we have other selections beneath them for points and or different types of art. So we're just going to start with the basic tutorial of how to get something on the screen. All right, we have our coordinate system here, and typically when you're drawing, especially and specifically in the ordered style, you pick a reference plane or a feature to start with. In the same scenario here, we're going to go ahead and hover over our reference plane. You notice as I hover, it gets a little F3 little icon with a lock. All right, so down here in my lower left-hand corner where my prompt bar is actually telling me to do things. To look for center or endpoints specifically, or F3 to lock to a reference plane. So I'm going to use F3 on my keyboard, and it's locked. I can tell it's locked. It puts a little cursor or a little icon up here in my right-hand corner, signifying that I am locked to that coordinate system. All right, so no matter how I rotate around, I'm always going to be drawing on the XY plane. All right, and for those who like to draw planar to the screen as opposed to drawing in a more of an isometric 3D view, there is a shortcut. I'll tell you what that is. It's Control H. So H is in home. So Control H takes you to the 2D view. If you want to use the icons to do it, down here in the lower right-hand corner where we have our command finder, we have our tools for wireframe, for solids, for shaded, for zoom, pan, all those things. This icon right here, which again is sketch view, and you can see it says Control H is your shortcut. So anytime you rotate it around, you can kind of come back and hit this little guy. It takes you right back to your sketch. All right, so let's go ahead and start with our sketching. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just start drawing a line. We're going to draw a box with the circle, and you see immediately we get some feedback on the angle and or size of our geometry. Let's go with 8. So we're in an English template, so we're going to have inches and feet. If you were in a metric template, obviously millimeters. I believe most of the tutorials are specifying millimeter templates, so I did not start with the right one, but the result's going to be the same. So you continue on. You notice you get some feedback. You notice the cursor to the right of my icon snaps to a horizontal, vertical, depending on where my cursor position is. So let's go ahead and close it out. Just by touching the previous line, you get some feedback to where that line ends, so you know you can snap down to it, and then go ahead and close it out. All right, so as soon as I do that, you notice it highlights this inside area with a blue shade. Well, that's indicating I have a closed region. So for synchronous, that's kind of what you want as a closed region to start with. we want to go ahead and position this over to my coordinate system. So I got a few more things to draw on here. If I want to go ahead and draw a circle here, I know I'm going to have a little hole right here. So just kind of position that. And one more piece of geometry. Let's just add a little boss right here. That looks good. All right. And so let's move this over. So there's multiple ways to do that. I can kind of just grab it. And you notice I don't get anything to move it with. Because when you're in Sychronous, you get the little steering wheel to either add or remove geometry. If I pick my sketch from the Pathfinder, so I hit the little plus mark, expand it out, and grab my sketch, notice I get a steering wheel on it. Well, that's one way to move it. I can say, position my steering wheel from where I want to go from, and I'm just using the little ball in the middle to position. So I just snap over to an edge, it snaps to the center, grab that little blue disc in the middle. So you got the ball, you got the torus, and in between you got this little disc plane. And that allows you to kind of move things 360 degrees in space. I'm going to come over here and attach it to that piece of geometry right there. So now I'm centered on my reference planes. Typically, you want to go ahead and use reference planes for symmetry reasons, for dimensioning reasons. It's just good practice. All right, so let's add a few things to this. I'm going to go ahead and just, I could go ahead and make a solid out of two different regions, but just for this purpose, I'm going to use a trim tool. So under your draw menu bars, you have trim corner, adding radiuses, etc. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim that away. So then that leaves one region. But again, my geometry is not fully defined, it's just kind of floating in space. So we need to kind of use some dimensions to define the overall size and shape. And we also need relationships to help along with this. So let's relate the geometry first. So the next tab over from my draw is relate. And we're going to use some of these tools in here. They're all fairly simple to use. For example, equal. So in the works, I want this line to be equal to that line. So that's the way it works in the selection options. I'm going to use horizontal vertical. All right, so it does several things. As you notice, as you hover over an icon, it gives you a nice little feedback. Little replay video shows you how it works. So we're going to go and use the horizontal vertical to find a snap point, which happens to be the midpoint here, to my coordinate system endpoint. That keeps that centered on there. And that's really all I need. I can now start applying dimensions. So let's go ahead and give it some overall size. So I'm using a smart dimension. So as you notice, the smart dimension allows me to pick lengths of lines, distance between 2 points, angled edges. All right, so now just using the same tool, I'm just going to grab the outside diameter of that circle, go ahead and apply my radius, 2.5. And I'm noticing something here. My geometry is still blue. And there's a tool I want to show you. It's under the Inspect tab. It's called Relationship Colors. All right, so I want to make sure that when you click it, it stays shaded. So what that's going to do is when I start applying geometry to my coordinate system, so for example, I want to make sure that that circle is locked to my coordinate system. I can pick it and try to drag it. You notice it drags off the coordinate system because it's not fully attached. So I'm going to use another relationship. I'm going to make sure that's attached by using a connect. All right, so I'm just going to say connect center to endpoint, and you notice something different. My profile turns black. So that circle is being located by a relationship, and it's also being dictated 2.5-inch diameter. So as soon as I position this off of that circle, I should probably make the whole thing turn black. It didn't. Oh, I understand what's going on here. If I grab a line, I can tell that that line's not going to stay aligned up with this one. So I could use horizontal vertical. I could use a couple different things. I'm just going to go ahead and say collinear. In this situation, I'm going to say I want that line to be collinear to this line. As soon as I do that, that bottom line turns black. The only thing I'm missing is the length of this little ball section here. So I can either do it from this edge, which I'll go ahead and say 1.5, and there we have it. My profile turns black, it's fully defined. Make sure my last dimension gets changed. So I can have a region now. And what we want to do with your sketches and regions is create geometry from them. So at this point, with the closed region, which we have right here, I can go ahead and grab that. So I'm just using my select tool. select my region. Again, there's that arrow I was talking about. So when I grab that arrow, it immediately starts turning into a protrusion. So it's going to ask you which direction you want to go one way or the next. In this scenario, I like to use a symmetric. I want it to go symmetric about the coordinates. So I'll click this. If I want to use a shortcut, the shortcut for you is Shift on your keyboard. So hit Shift, and that will toggle you between the symmetric and non-symmetric instead. So I'm just going to say 5, and there we have it. All right, so the first thing you notice is my sketch that I used to create the geometry is thrown into a folder called Use Sketches. All right, so every time you use a sketch in Sync, so for example, if I want to draw another cutout on this, I'm going to go ahead to my circle. So in this instance, instead of locking to the reference plane, I want to lock to the front face. So I can either hit the little lock with my cursor and click it, or hit F3. So I'm just going to go draw a circle here. All right, so again, I have a region here and a region here. All right, so of course, I wanted to put dimensions on there, define it, I can. But in this scenario, I'm just going to go ahead and grab it. And of course, I have a sketch folder. So there's the sketch that I'm using, and there's my Use Sketch folder. So as soon as I go ahead and make a cutout out of this, it gets thrown into a Use Sketch folder. All right. So typically in an ordered environment, if you're coming from SolidWorks, if you delete a sketch that a feature is based on, well, that feature disappears. Same with ours. All right, because this is synchronous, so it doesn't require the sketches. If you do want a sketch, any given time, again, you can right-click and say Restore Sketch. Remember, I mentioned earlier, if you want to grab a sketch from the Pathfinder, it allows you to drag it. So I can go ahead and drag that sketch out here if I wanted to use it again. Maybe I want to use it in a different orientation. So using my steering wheel, I can position it just centered here. And using Shift on my keyboard, holding it down and clicking that blue plane that I used earlier, I can change the orientation of it, and I can actually just rotate my sketch around. And now I can create another feature from that if I wanted to. And continue on restoring sketches. The sketch does not tie the geometry together, so even though they're from the same sketch, they are not the same width. All right, so that's using synchronous sketches. All right, so let's start a new template here. I'm going to do the same thing in ordered. And again, you're going to get these. You're going to have these templates, and you're going to have this video to go through in practice. So again, ANSI inch part and right-click, transitional ordered. All right, my menu bar changes slightly. All right, so again, we're going to go into a sketch. So I'm going to pick a sketch. So just like synchronous, you need a place to draw from. So we have options here. Right on the fly, we can choose parallel planes, angle plane, etc. We're just going to use coincident plane for this scenario. Pick a reference plane. It automatically rotates you to the 2D view in this scenario. You still have the same sketch view, Control H. So even though that you're ordered and you rotate around, hit Control H. The same shortcuts for synchronous work here. It takes you back to your 2D view. All right, so let's create the same kind of geometry. I'm going to go ahead, again, under Inspect, you notice we still have relationship colors turned on. So we're going to use the coordinate system to start with. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and let's get some reference here. It's going to be 2.5 like the previous geometry. In this scenario, let's go ahead and just use a box by center. Let's continue on and do the same type of profile. There we go. And trim again. Notice the exact same type of relationships that we have in synchronous, we have in ordered. So, the sketching there is pretty much apples to apples with the sketching we have in synchronous. The only difference is how they behave. So once I'm done here, I will explain how that works. So we throw a few more dimensions. And one more relationship to tie that to the center. There we go. Oh, tie this side, make it symmetric to the center as well. There we have it. I'm not going to take the time to change these, but let's go ahead and just leave them as is. All right, so there's my sketch. All right, so again, now we're going to tell it whether we want to make a revolve feature from it, an extruded feature. I come over here and now say extrude. I have a sketch already on screen, so I can just say select and sketch, and grab my sketch features, grab them both, and of course, make them both symmetric. And there we have it. All right, so the scenario here is we have our feature. Unlike Sychronous, where any given time you can either pick a face, so back in Sychronous, where you can just kind of start dragging on geometry and making it longer or shorter. Here, in ordered, well, the sketch itself now is the driving geometry. So if I pick the sketch, we have a little box that pops up, and this is how you go through and define how you want it to be modified. If I want to go back into the profile to actually make another feature, I can do that. I can hit edit profile. It takes me right back into the sketch. Again, once I'm done with my sketching, let's go ahead and finish this off. Make sure I get all my lines turned black. That'll do it right there. Again, hit the close sketch button. Takes you back out to the 3D environment. Right click to finish, and you're done. All right, if you just want to change the dimensions, you can use our dynamic edit option here. So click this. So what this does is actually brings up the feature, and you can start changing dimensions right here from the screen. You don't have to go into the profile. And what's nice about it, it's dynamically editable, so you can kind of just drag things around and see how they affect the geometry live instead of having to edit the profile, close it out, hit finish, let it recalculate, then see what happens. By dynamically changing the geometry, you can kind of see where it's going on the fly. All right. So again, the dimensions here are actually part of the geometry. They're not part of the sketch. So let's go ahead and just get rid of all the sketches. So we have our PMI dimension here. Well, how do you get around not having to see all the dimensions? Well, we have a little pathfinder. So here is our PMI dimensions that are on the screen. You can check and uncheck these as needed. If you uncheck them, what's very nice about it is if I pick a face that I want to make a change to, you notice the dimensions for that particular face pop up. So I come over here and say, okay, I want that to now go a specific direction. So this is something that the sketches in order do not have, is the ability to change which direction you want them to change after the sketch is created. So if you lock a sketch in order, typically it's going to go one direction or the other based on how you designed it. Here, after the fact, I can say, you know what, I want that face to be 9, or you know what, I want that back face to move and maybe make that 5. Or if I want it to go symmetric in both directions, I can come over here and move it symmetric in both directions. And once you're done with it, and once you're happy, say 8.5, you can lock it. And basically, that becomes a locked dimension. Let's turn it back on. So the rest are still blue. So that means if I try to grab that face and drag it, it's going to move the entire piece of geometry based on that lock. All right, so that's kind of a catch that you can make sure that the things that you want don't get changed by locking the dimensions. All right, so let's do something here. I'm going to open up a file, and all right, so we're going to now create some sketches on a piece of geometry. So again, this will be a file that we'll give you, and again, it's downloadable from the Siemens site. All right, so we're going to create a little boss on this face, and we're going to create another bracket on this side. All right, so again, we're going to go into our sketch menu, but instead of this time, we're going to lock to another face. We're going to, again, lock to this F3 and create our sketch. All right, so I'm going to show you a little shortcut here for to make line and arcs. All right, so if I just start my sketch, draw my profile, make sure it's straight. All right, so I'm still in the sketch command. If I hit A on my keyboard, by hitting A, it's going to turn into an arc command. So depending on which quadrant I drag out of, so if I go this way, it's going to come out this way. If I go straight up, it's going to go up. So I want to make sure I come out the end, go to the right, come back up a little bit, and it automatically turns back into a line, just like before. Touch the previous line, snaps to it, hit A again, and it's going to turn into an arc, and it's going to close off. All right, so now is the time you'd use your relationships again, like we did previously, to make sure that your geometry is centered. So let's go ahead and center this up on this part right here. Use a few dimensions. Let's go ahead and make that 28. Make that 5. Again, notice my profile turned black. So at this point, if I wanted it to be a protrusion, I'd pick it. It's an automatic selection right here. You notice we have the plus minus. What that's telling me is if I grab it drag it out, it's going to be a protrusion. If I push it through, it's going to be a cutout. If you know specifically what you want to do, if you say you want to add it, you can just click add and it's going to be a boss. So just type in the distance you want it to protrude out, and there you have it. Again, once again, dimensions need to be locked because you would want to define how you want this to move. So again, I'd go through and make sure that these are correct. And I want that face to on the outside to move. And you only have to do it one time, so at any given time it understands that it wants to move symmetric from there on out. You don't have to pick which direction you want it to move every time. It remembers how that is going to work. All right, so that's drawing on a face. How do we draw on a location that there is no face or reference plane? All right, we can easily add reference planes in Sychronous to sketch on. So just by using a coincident plane, attaching it by clicking that face, you notice we automatically get an arrow on the reference plane. So I'm going to grab the arrow pointed at me and just say, let's move that out 20 millimeters. All right, so now we have a reference plane where my sketch is going to be. But instead of actually drawing the sketch this time, we are going to use what they call project to sketch. All right, so this is going to actually take the face of a geometry, whether it's parts from an assembly or parts from the part file. So once again, you notice again F3. All right, so I'm going to lock to that. You're going to wear your F3 key and escape out. You hit those a lot. All right, so hit F3. I'm locked to a reference plane. Maybe I want to project with an offset. You know, this one I want to make it exact, so I'm just going to say OK. Then as I start picking these edges, you notice they start getting projected onto that reference plane. All right, so now that that's done, again, remember I'm locked to the reference plane. I can hit Control H, so I'm looking at it. Now I can come back and add some other geometry. Maybe we don't want that neck to go all the way to the top. And maybe, again, we want to add another feature in here. Oops, this is a good example. I made that line crooked. I didn't do it on purpose. I just did it by accident. But again, you can use horizontal vertical relationship. Instead of picking a key point, do not click an end or midpoint. If you just want that line to be straight, just click somewhere on the line and it'll snap closer to horizontal or vertical depending on the orientation. All right, so again, now I have the trim tool at my disposal. I'm going to just go ahead and left click and hold down and drag through where I want to remove. So I want to remove that. And the same thing here, left click and hold and drag. I want to go ahead and get rid of those lines. There we go. All right, so now I have a piece of geometry here. I can go ahead and extrude. All right, so I'm going to do this. I did this as a particular reason. I noticed I didn't close my profile off. It has an open piece of geometry. All right, so it doesn't see that as a region. And as a matter of fact, if I want to get rid of this reference plane, I can always uncheck it. Or guess what? I can actually delete it. I don't really need it. It's only there for help me create that sketch, but it's there, so I don't need it. So I'm going to do an extrude. You know, typically you'd grab a face using the regions to grab a region. But in this case, I'm going to do an extrude. The reason why is because we have some options. Here we have single, chain, or face. I can't use face because I do not have a region, but I can use a chain. So I'm going to say chain. I'm going to go ahead and grab that sketch. All right, just right click to accept. And I know that because I look down here at my prompt bar. It says right click or enter to accept. So right click. All right, so there's an extra step that you don't get if you get a closed profile. Since this is an open profile, it's asking me which side of the material do you want to add or cut away. Since I'm adding geometry, I want to point to the inside. Now it's going to ask me how deep do I want this to go. And again, using shift on my keyboard, I can go symmetric. And let's just go ahead and make it 5 millimeters. And there we have it. So there's my geometry. Again, if you wanted to put dimensions on it at any given time, you can start adding dimensions to define your final product. And again, what's nice about this is it's synchronous. So we get this little nice design intent that pops up anytime you pick a face. So let me just give you a quick rundown of how this works. All right, so when I grab a face, you get an arrow on it. You notice that we have some rules here that it's looking for. So it's looking for concentric faces, collinear faces, coplanar faces. So I'm going to say I want to grab this face, and you notice it's going to start moving both faces based on the fact that it's actually a coplanar face. If I say, you know what, I just want that one face to move, and I want the face to move without the dimensions changing it, I can uncheck dimensions, and then you notice what happens. The part moves by itself. The dimensions no longer drive it. I can place it, and as soon as I place it, the dimensions lock, relock. I can turn my coplanar back on. So any other type of geometry that are still coplanar will behave as coplanar, such as this. All right. So that is a tutorial that we'll provide you. Let me go ahead and get to this drawing one. This is not part of the training, but it's a really good practice to, or good way to actually bring geometry in from a 2D print. So let me close some of this out. All right, so I'm going to just say open. I'm going to change my extension type to a DWG. All right, so here's a DWG. If you wanted to go to options just to see what it is, you can always hit preview, and it gives you an idea of what you're looking at here. I'm just going to use my default and say open and tell it what template. I know this is a metric template, and this is important. I'm going to actually use a ANSI metric draft template so my dimensions come across correct. So let's open that up. All right, here we have it. So here's the 2D sketch geometry, and it's just 2D sketches. You notice I can just grab a line and or kind of just pull them apart. So they're just sketches on a 2D sheet. First thing I want to do is I only want this drawing geometry, but there's a lot of stuff in the way, some notes and stuff I don't need, some hatching I can turn off. So in my Pathfinder, you have things like your parts library, which is your 2D blocks. I have a layer option here, and I can go through and hide things. I don't want my center lines, don't need the hatching on. Let's see, I want a title block hidden, so I can pick it, and you notice what happens as soon as I pick that line, it highlights the layer that that line is associated with. So I'm going to go ahead and hide my title block. And just a couple of things, let's go ahead and get rid of that note. We don't need that little arrow there, so I'm just going to do a little fence around it and just hit delete on my keyboard. All right, so let's go take this 2D geometry and bring it into a 3D space and use it to create a model with. And I want the dimensions to come across with it as well, so I'm going to show you a tool. So under your tool drop down, we have a command called Create 3D. All right, so here we have it. All right, it's going to ask us which template we want to use. Again, this is metric. These are millimeters, so I'm going to go to ANSI metric, ANSI metric part. So this is going to be a part file. All right, under the options, let's use third-person projection. That's what we use here. And of course, if you want to or not want to bring dimensions, maybe you don't want dimensions to come across, you can uncheck these. But if you do want them to come across, have these checked. Say OK. All right, so scale, I turned the title block off, but down here you notice gives me a scale value. I'm 1:1, so I know I want to leave my scales 1. All right, so now I'm going to say, let's grab my geometry. So it's going to ask for my front view, so I'm going to define this as my front view and just clicking and holding a fence around it. It gets all to my dimensions, like everything I want. This says good. Say next. Let's get my top view. I can set a fold line, but in this scenario, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to do it on the side view to set my fold line. I'm going to show you something once we get to the part file, how to manipulate it. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip the set fold line, say next, grab my next. This is my side view. And this one I'm going to set a fold line. And what I'm doing here is defining where I want this to line up on this view. By default, it'll just line it up on this edge, but I want it to be in the middle, so I'm just going to say I want that midpoint to make sure I've got that midpoint. So there's my center points, and I'll just say finish. And what it's going to do is take those sketch geometry from the 2D and bring them into the environment, which is an ANSI metric for this scenario. And again, I told this view to line up on the center. So if I go to my right side view, you can see I'm symmetric about the coordinate system. On my top one, it lined it up on the edge like it normally would, but I can manipulate that afterwards if I need something from it. I can come over here and hover through, and now that turns orange, so I know that's the sketch that I need. Again, remember the steering wheel gets placed on there, so I'm just going to move my steering wheel to a particular snap point on here. I'll just find a midpoint. So on my tools, I'll just say, give me a midpoint. Grab the center ball again, find a midpoint of one of the edges, and I can start moving it. So I can just find the midpoint of the next edge. Now that's lined up. All right, again, remember, you have to use the Pathfinder sketch to grab. If you're just trying to grab it from the screen, you don't get the steering wheel to move things with. All right, so now, since I brought this into a part file in Sychronous, those sketches turn into regions. All right, so I'm just going to start grabbing my regions and applying the thicknesses using the other sketches. And you're going to see what's going to happen here once I start doing that. So again, just by using my select tool, grab my region. It goes both directions, which is what I want. I'm just going to use the edge of that guy right there. And as soon as I do that, you notice some of these yellowish dimensions start turning blue. Well, they start getting attached back to the geometry that they came from, which is the sketch geometry. So now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to hit Shift and hold it on my keyboard. This allows me to go grab multiple regions. So when I'm done, I can let go of my Shift key, then just grab an arrow. Again, I want to go symmetric and just use another snap point. All right. We've got almost everything I need except the bosses here. Well, there's a couple different ways to get them, but remember earlier when I said you can restore sketches? Well, I can come back and restore that sketch, and now it's restored, so now I have a region to grab. So I can grab that again, hitting Shift, grab that region, and start extruding it out, and go to the edge of that. And now let's go ahead, and since we could either cut that away again, or we could use the steering wheel. So I'm going to use the steering wheel in this scenario, making sure my design intent is on, and I'm going to move I don't want to move this out or in, I want to move this into 3D. So again, if I grab that little bearing in the middle, it turns into a 3D steering wheel. Let's go ahead and make sure I go to the right location. And I want to rotate about that bottom edge. So I'm just grabbing my steering wheel, dragging it to that edge, snapping it to it. All right, so what we're going to do, it doesn't have to be in the center or anything, it just has to be on edge. All right, so once I do that, I can grab steering wheel and start rotating around, and you can start looking for another key point to snap to. See, I want to change my key point back to, let's set it to all, so I find everything. You notice it's doing on both sides. Well, the reason why is finding symmetry about the coordinate systems. It's finding symmetry about both sides. So now I just go find that endpoint, and there we have it. I think that should be all the dimensions. Turn blue. That looks good. All right, so now you can just hide your sketches, and they turn off. And of course, now at this point, if you wanted to start making changes, for example, if you wanted to round that up, basically make that 112. Remember, you can use this tool right here. I want that to go both directions, so both faces move. And again, both faces are going to move on both sides because it's the same symmetric relationship. Make that 112. There you have it. Maybe make this 180. Makes that radius bigger. So there's your fully functionable 3D model created from just the 2D geometry. So, that's a real huge time saver. So if you wanted to, we just save this and show you. Wanted to bring it right back into draft. So I create a drawing of active model. So again, I'll be creating sketches from my 3D. So let's scale that, bring that view, and ISO view in. And now I can actually, all those dimensions that came from the 2D draft that went to the 3D model are now retrievable. So if I say retrieve those dimensions, I can retrieve all those dimensions that I used to create the geometry with, and then just line them up a little bit better than they come in. But you see the real speed of actually using 2D sketch geometry to actually create 3D models with. And then just bring them right back in, and you're good to go. So I think, yeah, we've got a few more minutes. So I want to, the ones that I did not get to, I'm going to go ahead and record. And again, we're going to upload these for you. So there's a few more tutorials that I didn't get to, 3D sketching, and one